Threatened by invading armies, the Hungarians had to flee their old homelands from the west of the Urals, and after crossing the Volga, they settled down in the area surrounding the Don River, inside the influence of the mighty Khazar Khaganate. This is the land which they called Levédia, after the Administrando Imperio, the work of Emperor Constantine VII, in which he mentions it as the home of Levédi, Hungarian chieftain. However, the existence of Levédia is full of questions. It's not only vague in the regards of when it existed, but it is also not clear if it was the home of Chief Levédi and his people, or of all Hungarians as a whole. So, when the Hungarian ancestors left Magna Hungaria behind, they settled down in the close proximity of the Khazar Khaganate. The Khaganate itself was an ethnically heterogenetic society. Although the Khazars, as the political elite, occupied the Volga Delta in their capital, Atil, the nomadic nation was a melting pot for all cultures inside. This resulted in the saltovo-mayaki culture around the Don and Donets rivers. Based on burial rites, archaeologists identified two main components in their society. One of them were the elongated skulled Alans, who fled from the Arabian expansion and buried their dead in catacomb graves. The other were the Onogurs, who had short skulls and used split graves. They were once part of the Hunnic tribes, and after their fall, they made a new empire, the Onogur Bulgarian Empire, or Great Bulgaria, which lasted until their defeat by the hands of the Khazars. This mixed ethnicity lived as a semi-nomadic society, but with time more and more of them settled down. They gave up their tents and built permanent houses out of wood and later from stone. This progress paved the way towards the first villages, where the first craftsmen appeared, leading into the boom of agriculture. The Hungarian tribes arrived into this culture and most likely took part in its progress. There are many words in the Hungarian language with Onogur origin which could not have existed in the purely nomadic society, like pig or chicken, animals that cannot be herded. The words for vine and plough implies the evolution of agriculture, while other words like law, loan, market, wizard and number are all pointing towards to advancement in intellectual and social life. The Hungarians, however, not only made connection with the commoners of the region, the appearance of a nomadic horde didn't avoid the attention of the Khazar elite. Their relationship started on the right notes, and it was based on the political and militaristic interest of the Khagan, which is evident in the structure of the Hungarian leadership from this time period. In the Khaganate, the use of diarchy was in place, meaning two persons made up a ruling pair. One of them was the Khagan, who was the sacred ruler as the mortal incarnation of Tengri Khan, their god. He only ruled for a certain amount of time, away from the eyes of the common folk with his harem, while he was in his prime. When age caught up to him, he was killed in a ritual sacrifice to ensure that his power and wisdom was passed to his successor. Although he made all the important decisions in the state, it was the Khagan Bey's duty to enforce them and lead the armies. This system was adopted by the Hungarians, where the militaristic leader was called the Gyula, while the sacred ruler was the Kende or Kundu, who was also the third in command in the Khazar royalty. Based on this, we can assume that despite the subordinative role of the Hungarians in the relationship, they were still highly valued members of the Khazar society, which can be attributed to their 20,000 strong horsemen that made up the auxiliary troops, and what was used for achieving the militaristic ambitions of the Khaganate. One of those conflicts was the Khazar-Pecheng War, where although they managed to defeat the Pechengs, they diverted their offense towards the lands occupied by the Hungarians and carried out great destruction among their banks. As a consequence, the Hungarians were split into two. One of their groups sought refuge by the Caucasian mountains, while most of them ventured westward with Levédia to a land called Etelköz, which means between rivers. The exact location of this place is uncertain, but it is estimated to be the area between the Siret, Prut and Dniester rivers. This migration of their tribes coincides with the deterioration of the Khazar-Hungarian relationship. around the middle of the 9th century, a rebellion erupted against the Khagan. The exact reasons of this are unknown, but researchers estimate its roots to be the Jewish conversion of the Khazar elite, who may have tried to convert their subjects to their newfound faith. Either way it happened, those who stood up against the Khazars were defeated and sought refuge at the Hungarian Confederation. After their inclusion, they represented the 8th tribe of the Hungarian alliance, with the name of Kabars, which literally translates to rebels. In Etelköz, the Hungarians not only gained a new tribe, but there was also a change in leadership. As the Pecheng threat grew ever larger, the Khaganate tried to unite the Magyar tribes under one leader, who they imagined to be Levédia. According to Emperor Constantine, the Khagan tried to marry the chieftain into their nobility, but he, however, refused the offer. In his place, he proposed another chieftain, Álmos, or his son, Árpád. While the European historiography mostly attributes the Hungarian unification to Árpád, the Hungarian tradition starts with the legend of Álmos as the birth of the Hungarian Grandpricipality. They called him Álmos as the result of a miraculous event, because in the dream of his pregnant mother, she saw a divine vision in the form of a turtle that landed upon and conceived her. She saw that from his womb a spring flows, and many glorious kings were rising from her groin, but they, however, will not rise at their own lands, since in the Hungarian language they call dreams álom, and his birth was predicted by a dream. They called him Álmos. The nameless historian of the Middle Ages tied the birth of his nation to Álmos, which he wrote down on the basis of oral tradition present in his lifetime. The exact procedure of the election of the Grand Prince also comes from him, which went down in the form of a blood oath. The 7 chieftains of the Hungarian tribes cut their arms, then drank their blood mixed with wine, sealing their vow, in which Álmos and his descendants were chosen as their leaders and rulers. Despite this union, they were not free from the grips of the Khazars, since written accounts still mentions them as the part of the Khaganate's army. However, the process of independence definitely began. They started many campaigns from the foregrounds of the Carpathians, which were nicknamed as adventuring. They launched attacks at the Slavs living in the north and made them pay tributes, while they sold their raided loot and taken slaves at the ports of Kerch, trading with the Byzantine Empire. However, those raids that went westward proved themselves far more important, since they were the first chance to get acquainted with the landscape of Europe. Their first appearance in the Old Continent can be dated around 836–838, when the Bulgarian empires tried to stop the Macedonians getting back to their own homelands who were subjugated under their rule. They hired the Hungarians as mercenaries, and despite their unsuccessful mission, their first appearance proves that they already lived in the relative proximity of the Carpathian Basin. The following indicates reports the Hungarian armies in the area with increasing frequencies, as they were employed by the Hungarian rulers of Europe. In 861, Kármán, king of Bavaria, rebelled against his father, Ludwig II, king of East Francia. The rebellious son was aided by Rastislav, Duke of Moravia, who hired the Hungarians to raid and pillage around Pannonia, which was under Frankic rule. 20 years later, the Hungarian military, aided by the Kabar auxiliary troops, battled again with the forces of Ludwig, but this time on the behalf of Svatopluk, who seized the rule of Moravia. It is important to mention that the Hungarian interventions in the European feuds did not stem from political interest or principle. They were simply a way to acquire wealth. This is clearly shown by the annals of the Fuldanadi, which tells the account when the Hungarians marched against the former employer Svatopluk to raid Moravia by the order of Emperor Arnulf in 892. Despite these campaigns starting out as simple raids, they gained a thing far more important than any wealth: information. The natural defenses of the Carpathians, which shielded against foe and nature alike, unfolded before their eyes. the endless horizon of the Great Plains, the dense forests of the Transdanubia, and the gentle meadows of Transylvania, all ripe for the taking. The region, which begged to be united under one banner, was torn between the bickering monarchs of Europe. They made the decision. They would move again, but now, for the last time. They would carve out a new home for themselves under the leadership of Grandprince Árpád, and they intend to pay for it with iron and blood. I thank you for watching till the end. I would also like to thank all my viewers who helped me reach 50 subscribers. Also a special thanks to Retiv staff, whose maps were a great help when I had to draw the European borders and campaigns. His work is in the description of the video.